Hi, my name is Mickey Peters. Welcome to the upside of authentic leadership. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Amy Kay to the podcast, and we're going to talk about Amy's been both a Vistage member and a Vistage speaker, so she knows what it's like to participate in Vistage. A lot of experience with that. We look forward to hearing her perspective and. So the first question is for Amy is, why is it important in our conversations as leaders to be authentic?
I think, it's so funny. Authenticity is such a buzzword, Mickey. I think you can probably relate to that. But I think that it's also one of the last things that's left out of marketing is to actually show up with your own voice. And I think that I've seen good leaders who are inconsistent in their authenticity. And I've seen brilliant leaders who learn how to master it. And so to me, like your success as a leader is that I showed up in every meeting, every conversation, every session with whether it's a constituent, a board member, a stakeholder of some import. And they said, I didn't change my core. I didn't show up and pretend to be anybody else. Now that doesn't mean that you don't show up with a strategy of how to communicate or a strategy how to frame. But you are the ballast of your ship and you don't change that. You don't give up your core values, your moral compass. And that to me is the sign of that mature, authentic leader is that, you are what you get in every conversation.
Right. What I've seen sometimes, where I've struggled as a leader is you have a communication department, you have press, people managing the press. And so they prepare talking points for you. And so, you're all prepped up, but then you realize, wow, this isn't really as you're giving, responding to the interview questions or whatever that, because of all the others that are involved in prepping you for those moments that you can slip out of, authenticity. So really being an active participant in that and making sure that what you're communicating is really representative of who you are.
Well, I think you just nailed it. Oftentimes that outsourced bullet pointing, that outsourced messaging, the underpinning is politics instead of humanity and connection. And so when you're more focused on the politics behind the message than you are in the connection and the humanity of it. I mean, there's a great definition out there on empathic intelligence, and it's so that you as the leader can respond sensitively. You as the leader can respond perceptively. And that doesn't mean, again, that you have to be careful in your word choice. I mean, hello, I teach communication skills. Words matter. And you still have to lead. And this is going to sound woo-woo, but it's not anymore. It's the world that we live in. You got to lead with love and you got to lead with connection. You and I, we were chatting before we hit record, and you made a great statement. And that is, it's really easy to see inauthentic leaders because there are cameras everywhere now. And that doesn't mean you can't make a mistake. You can't have a transgression. You can't have a misstep because you're human. But, it's that constant steadiness of, do I show up the way that I'm wired and with my core beliefs every step of the way, and I'm not faking it until I make it.
Right. I'm remembering I took a public speaking course from Michael Deaver, who was Ronald Reagan's speechwriter for many years. And he said one of the things Ronald Reagan was very consistent about was he would not speak on something that he really didn't believe in. He would turn down, the Republican National Committee many times. This is not something I really believe in, so I can't really speak to that. So because it won't be authentic. It won't be who representative of who I am.
Yeah. And I've had to do that too as a keynote speaker. So twice in my career, I've been asked to go speak at causes that I was just like, I can't get behind that. That's not what I believe in. So I believe that my tools would help them, but I don't want to send a message that I actually believe in the body that they represent. And it didn't even have anything to do with politics or religion or gun. Like, it wasn't the obvious ones. It was more about my moral compass doesn't support that message. And so I was just like, yeah, I'll take a pass. And again, I'm not going to sit here and sound like a hypocrite or pious. I make mistakes, on any day ending in Y, you can find me doing something that's like, no, because we're human. But I also think that authenticity comes back to owning that. So a lot of times we've been given mixed messages that leaders, you got to brush over the mistake, you got to move past it quickly. I think in today's world, in emotional intelligence, it's actually owning it faster, owning up to that. You did this and this is what you learned, or this is how you're going to play differently going forward. And then other people, as well as yourself, but other people can let go of it faster when you're willing to own it. And I think we've seen that in a myriad of ways.
Yeah, usually you see it done wrongly.
Yeah.
Where it's not really an apology. It's sort of as you say, skirting over the issue and trying to just move forward without really owning it. And nowadays there are so many people watching and commenting and critiquing that you get found out very quickly if you're not and called out publicly. If as a leader you're not really owning it.
And you should be called out for owning it. You should be, because sometimes things are really egregious or racist or backwards. And some of that is just the learning curve. I mean, we have a lot of different generations in the workplace right now, and we've got a lot of different perspectives, and we're all far more connected now around the globe. And so as you're rising in your impact, as your impact is expanding, it is statistically more likely that you're going to make a mistake. And so the faster that you learn to own it, get educated, and not repeat it, which shows people that you're sincere about learning, then you actually get better at being empathic and having people realize, okay, Amy Kay just stepped in it. She apologized for it. It was sincere. She's promised not to do it again. And now we see her behavior. She really is making an effort. We're on board with her.
Yeah, I mean, so especially baby boomers and Gen Xers, you mentioned something that may have been acceptable 20, 30 years ago, or not even draw any attention, all of a sudden is a very, very sensitive topic, and the way that you say things and can really be offensive to the younger generations now. And so I've heard many times people sort of brush that off and, well, they're too sensitive, political correctness. And what I hear you say is that's definitely not the way to go. You need to, many of your clients, your employees are in those generations. And so owning it and, I didn't know, I hadn't, heard that. And now that I have, I'm going to fix that and move forward with a different attitude.
Yeah. And I think it's a twofold responsibility. So I think that leaders have a responsibility to be aware of these changes. They have a responsibility. That doesn't mean you're always going to be aware, but you do have to take on the responsibility of what is current, what is happening, how is the world changing? Am I staying educated? Am I staying aware? Am I staying culturally sensitive to the world that's happening around me? And you may misstep still. So if you do, then it's not a defensive, well, I didn't know, because you have a responsibility to know. It's more of the, rather than being defensive and saying, I didn't know, lead with, now that I know, it won't happen again. And just own it. Like I say, now that I know, that will not happen again. So what happens is, and I've witnessed this, you'll be in a conference board meeting and one of the older generations, and I'm an Xer, so I'm full candid on, I'm 51. And so somebody, 50 or older will say something and you just cringe. And you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that person just said that. But this is really important too. If you are the one that hears it, it's really important that you don't come on the message of attack, because then that person's going to be embarrassed, defensive, and you have less likelihood of them learning in that moment than if you were to approach them with you may not be aware, but what you just said is racist, inappropriate, sexist, and you clearly didn't know, because you are a leader that we know that cares. So we're educating you now. This is not an acceptable thing to say. Now, if they're like, well, I didn't know, and that's ridiculous, or the world's too sensitive, then you have the right to push it further and say, your perspective of the world being too sensitive is one perspective. The rest of us believe that this sensitivity matters because we're trying to be more inclusive. We're trying to be more respectful. This sensitivity is important to us. There's a value in being sensitive and making people feel more included. So again, we're brainstorming, I'm riffing, but these are things like find your tone, find your tenor. But I
Right.
love the idea that if you're a younger generation and you hear somebody say something, you are absolutely allowed to say something. But I want you to go with the intent that I'm going to connect with this person and educate them. I'm not here to shame them. We don't want to perpetuate shame with shaming. We want to stop shaming, backward, prejudice, egregious, whatever, with education.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that you talk a lot about, and I think you're talking about it now to a degree, is the hard conversations. How to have those hard conversations in a way that brings people together, that educates and not polarizes. You know, I mean, continue to share more about that, because I think it's something that's missing in our society today, is having those hard conversations without pointing fingers and name calling and all of that.
Well, it's interesting. In our educational system, I get fired up about this because it's still lacking in this area. Like you can even in high school, you can take a class on like public presentations, or, giving a speech or participating in debate. But there's no class for young adults that says, here's how you sit down and talk about something really awkward with a family member. Here's how you sit down and talk about a lack of performance with, somebody on your team, or a family member, or, differing politics or religious principles and beliefs. And so one of the things that I've been joking about it for now over 25 years, is the life though that you want, it's on the other side of a tough conversation. And yet most of us, we avoid them every single day. And I'll share the factual nerd in me wants to say this: the cost of a avoided conversation, we've proven now, is anywhere from $7,500 to over $15,000, depending on the context of that conversation. So you think about it in the workplace, how many tough conversations are you avoiding? The cost of all those conversations. And here's the last stat that I'll share. On average, most executives will avoid the toughest conversation, the one that costs the most, somewhere between 6 months to 2 years.
Wow.
And that's crazy to me.
Yeah, no, I mentioned earlier, I've been guilty of that, mostly with my wife, kicking the can down the road, and trying to find the perfect time, to have the conversation. It's better if she's, in a better mood or whatever. And then, it always comes down to, why did you take so long to bring this up? So I can validate your.
Well, let's talk about that. So when somebody says, why did you wait so long to talk about this? Is you can say, because I wasn't ready, or I didn't know how. Like I would have started this conversation, but I didn't know how. Or I didn't want to make a molehill into a mountain, except that by waiting you have. But
right.
These are the things that from a magical phrase, I'm known as the queen of magical phrases, mainly because I wished I'd had them. I got them too late, right after the conversation where you wish you'd had a magical phrase. So over the years, I've gathered them together. And one of the things that I highly encourage people to do who have to have a tough conversation is to just say that this conversation is going to be tough, and it's really important for us. Or this is going to be an awkward conversation. I've been avoiding it because I didn't want to hurt your feelings. And it's really important for us, the project, the client, the prospect, the team dynamics, our culture, whatever it is, fill in the blank. But notice what I'm doing is I'm saying this conversation is going to be tough, or this conversation is going to be awkward, and it matters. And it's really important. And so what you're saying is, I'm going to be a little vulnerable, and I'm going to be emphatic that we're having it, because the cost of not having it is too great.
So how about what I would add to that is, I'm not very good at doing this, so be patient with me. Is that,
Yes.
I'm going to do the best I can here, and hopefully, it's good enough. But I'm not. This is not something that I normally do well. So just again, being vulnerable and just
Yes, but let's go full circle to how we started. That vulnerability, that's authentic leadership. That's not you trying to fake it. That's not you with your sound bites. That's you showing up vulnerable to say, I don't like these. That makes me uncomfortable. I don't like having these. I don't have them very often. So if I stumble or I say something, call me out. But notice the invitation now. And this is really important too for tough conversations. It's not about excuse my behavior. Like I'm not good at this, so excuse my misstep. We're not saying that. We're saying the opposite. If I misstep or when I misstep, call me out. I'm inviting you to call me out. And then you have to practice patience that you'll probably get called out because you're learning. So it's not about excusing your behaviors in a tough conversation. It's about inviting them to call you on it.
Right. And so for me, when the thing I'm learning is the pause, deep breath, especially when somebody calls me out. I have a tendency to get defensive. So learning how to pause and take a deep breath during that conversation
So let's talk about that. So we get defensive for several reasons, but one of them is because we have something called an ego. I'm sure you've heard of that magical word, but the ego has a very protective persona. So if you think about it, it gets a little bit layered in the sense of, let's just say you and I are having a conversation and then I call you out on something that you've said. You're going to get defensive, one, because you don't want to be that person, because you care, because you think of yourself as a kinder, more open, more aware. And now somebody has just threatened your identity. So when I say, well, that was rude, Mickey, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that just threatened my identity because I don't think of myself as rude. I think of myself as caring. And so now you're doubling down and from your ego of, I just said something, and now I don't want to admit that I just said something. So if you can, and it's a practice, all self-leadership is a practice, you might get defensive in the moment, but if you can be aware enough to take a couple deep breaths and hear yourself in hindsight, you always have every right to come back and say, Amy Kay, I reacted a little defensively. Now I want to respond thoughtfully. That was my ego. I get it. I'm learning. But here's the beautiful thing. This is authentic leadership. So I have sat in conference rooms where my ego has been triggered. Hello, 30s, right? When you're climbing the corporate ladder, your ego in your 30s is like, it's bigger. Now that I'm 51, it's like, oh my gosh, if your ego pops up, it's like, whatever, that was my ego. Let me respond thoughtfully. But here's the beautiful thing. The minute that you know this practice, you can start putting it into practice by saying things like, oh, I just got triggered. I don't know why I got triggered, but I did. So let me respond more thoughtfully now. You don't have to do your therapy work in front of everybody. You can go do the work separately, but just owning it, that's authentic leadership right then and there.
Yeah, learning how to laugh at myself has been very, very helpful. Yeah, sorry, that's my bad. Got triggered. Let me start over. Do over, please. Reset. So that's been very helpful. Well, I think we're at the end of our time here, and one thing I feel like I should send you a check. I've learned some good phrases here, and I'm gonna immediately put them into practice. Have some opportunities, I think, today at home. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll let you know how it goes. And thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It was an honor to be invited. I love what I do. So it's fun to connect.
Awesome. Well, have a good day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mickey.
Cut.
Yay! Now, do you feel good about that?
Yeah, I do. I think, this is a topic. Oh my God, I could go on for hours, just this, especially what you told me, what you said about just saying, hey, we're going to have a hard conversation, just naming it like that. Cause I never know how to start. I grew up in a home where, we had a lot of passive aggressiveness and nobody ever really, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. So we never, and my parents to this day, they're both still alive. They're married. I love them dearly, but they've never had an honest conversation, I don't think, in their whole life. So I never saw it modeled. How do you do this? And what you just did for me was amazing. Oh, just say it. Hey, I'm gonna have to say something you may not like, but I think it's important that we have this conversation. Because I would literally how do I
well, and that's the if we were role playing, just give me the first name of your wife.
Stephanie.
So to sit down with Stephanie and say, we need to have probably a little awkward conversation, but it's really important to us because I love you so much. And I want it to be easy for us. I want it to be playful for us. I love you. And we're going to have an awkward conversation. But if you sat down and say, hey, I got to say something you're not going to like, she's immediately going to get defensive. She's going to be like, oh my God, I'm about to be attacked. She's going to say something that I don't like. So I'm going to gird, and then she's going to get defensive. She's not going to listen to you. She's going to be listening for where you're wrong. So like you could say to her, like, the other night at the party, you undermined me. Nope, I didn't. Like, so she's going to be defensive. But if you say, I want to share something because I love you and it's important to our relationship, now she's going to listen because the relationship's important to her.
Yeah, my wife's from Jersey, so she has that. She's from, the Sopranos, Jersey.
Yeah.
So she has no problem having hard conversations.
Yeah. Well, then that's good. I mean, but here's the thing too. If you play this back and you're like, I want a part two, I'm here. Like this is easy and fun for me. If you get to where you're like, oh, my members or my prospects really like that, let's talk about this. They want to know, like, they actually asked me to just pick up the phone and call me. Paul will make this look great.
Right.
And then when it comes out, let me know, and we'll support it. We'll share it on our channel. But what I didn't do was talk about being a member because our conversation didn't go there. It wasn't natural.
Right.
But we can always do one again. So I'm here if you want it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, like I say, I feel like I should write you a check. You have that's probably one of the biggest one of the reasons I'm in Vistage. I was one of those guys that's really good at a lot of things, but the one thing that I always got needs to improve, being a bad cop, saying the hard things. And so I said, well, Vistage, I can, confrontation. Word I learned at Vistage. So yeah, that's one of the main reasons. And one of the, I want to learn how to do that better, because it was something that, it's held me back, not only in business, but also at home with my kids. So I really appreciate your wisdom on that, your experience. And I'm going to put you on the list for 2023 to come. And you come to Houston to speak to groups?
So I did 2,600 something groups over the years, and now I only do the executive summits. So if you guys have a Houston area or a Texas executive summit, I'd love to be invited. Absolutely. Yeah. But I lived on the road for too long with speaking, and so now I'm a little bit more protective.
Yes, and I can relate to that reason. And one of the other reasons I'm doing Vistage is I used to travel almost 100%. I'm from the power generation, hydro, and I lived abroad, lived in Peru and Brazil, and so and then I traveled. My God, I have almost 2 million miles on Continental. So I said, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna die and then I just had quadruple bypass heart surgery about 2 months ago. So
no way.
Yeah, way.
How you feeling? You look amazing.
Thank you. Appreciate that. But yeah, it just went well. I was surprised because I didn't have any of the only warning sign was chest pains. And I went in and they said, hey, something's wrong with your heart. We need to do some more looking. And they did the angiogram, I think they call it. Mm-hmm. Said, well, you have 7 bypasses and your heart is 95% blocked. We don't know how you're alive. You should be dead. Because I was having these chest pains while working out, jumping rope at the gym. And they said, they wouldn't let me leave the hospital because they said your heart is so, you're a walking heart attack. So anyway, but one of the things I'll keep telling people this because I think it's an important learning is, so I was trying to figure out what happened. I eat well, I exercise, and so a friend of mine sent me a book, and so heart disease is the leading cause of death of a man in America, and the leading cause of heart disease is isolation and loneliness.
Okay. And
so Vistage, right? That's got another plug for Vistage. So trying to tell men to you gotta connect. you gotta be in groups and learn how to be vulnerable. Otherwise, because, I gave a speech last week and I said, it's a matter of life and death. Because most men
Yeah.
think, well, I'm not built that way. I can't do that. That's not who I am. And I said, well, it's actually, believe it or not, a matter of life and death. If you don't, this is you get clogged up hearts. So yeah, and I had a lot of that in my past, just being on the road all the time. And game changer for me was actually a peer advisory group. It was YPO at the time in Brazil. I was in YPO for 7 years, and it really, Brazilians know how to emote and be vulnerable. I've never seen men sit in a group and weep openly without apologizing or anything. They just do that like they breathe. I said, wow, that's amazing.
It is amazing because we don't do it here at all in our Western society. In fact, you're considered weak for it. And all that repressed emotion, as you say, it's got to cause disease because it's really, it's going to sound trite, but you've heard this before, dis-ease, and that's going right to your heart. I totally believe all of that, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm a walking poster child for it. So so another reason why I'm doing Vistage, to build groups and make them safe places for people to get vulnerable and real, and talk about what's going on, what's not working.
Well, that passion will sell, and I don't mean that in a crass way. Your passion, your lit up flame about it, will attract the right people to your group, and it will happen.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's now that I'm back walking and in society, back as a fun it wasn't that the recovery is not, takes about 6 weeks, 8 weeks. So
well, you don't look like you had that surgery.
Yeah, I know. People keep telling me that. My wife and my doctor is like, you look amazing. I said, well, did I look so bad before?
Well, I've never seen you before. All I know is this after. So you look amazing. But so probably in all seriousness, I bet your color and your skin texture changed because you're getting more oxygen.
Yeah, no, my wife, a couple weeks before it all went down, she took a picture of me and she said, man, you look really pale. Something's not right. And she was right. I was had no blood flow. So
yeah.
Well, I will take you up on your offer and talk to Paul, and we'll set up another, we can do it again. Perfect. I really, honestly, really enjoyed and would love to hear you speak. And I plan to, you have books? Did you write books?
I do. I have 2 of them.
Okay. So yeah, because honestly, this is an area that is, if I could get this better, it would be a game changer for me. My family and my work, everything I do, if I could learn how to be more consistent about having those tough conversations. So I'm going to buy your books and read them, and hopefully get you to Houston to do what do you call it? Executive session?
Yeah, no, executive summit.
Summit. Okay.
Yeah, which is like the big. It's like when all the chairs get all their groups together in the same conference center.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I think.
And yeah, have me back for tough conversations, because we got into authentic leadership and we got some gems, but there's a ton of stuff I can share. And again, I just believe in the practicality of it. Your members and your prospects, they've got to walk away thinking, I didn't know that before, therefore I got to have Vistage in my life. Like Vistage is going to introduce me to stuff I wouldn't get anywhere else.
Right. No, and that theme has come up a lot, is the inactivity, like procrastinating on personnel decisions, and it really comes down to, I don't want to have that conversation. This isn't working out. We're going to have to, so that's really at the, like you said, conversations. What was it? Our life happens one conversation at a time, right?
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'll let you get back to your day. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you, and I'm gonna be not stalking you, but I'll be reading your books and let you know the progress. Because all
right, sounds good. Total delight, Mickey, to connect. Total delight. Thanks for having me. We'll connect again soon.
All right. Bye-bye.